In the tutorial 8 and 9, the questions related to the subprograms, implementing subprograms, storage management in programming languages, then the short circuit and side effect problems, abstract data type, and the exception handling related questions have been asked in the tutorials. The tutorial 8 and 9 consisting of these questions. I hope by this time you might have completed these questions, and also you might have attempted the test assignment for the T2 topics. So these topics are quite simple. You go through the lecture videos if you are unable to if you have not gone through the lectures so far, and I am providing some links, web links for the activation records and storage management topics. So you are recommended to go through those links and go to the material found in the particular links. So look at the file attached to this tutorial 10 and 11. In that you will find the links for the activation record. A simple explanation was given for the activation records, and the static link and dynamic link and scoping. Next is storage management in programming languages. This garbage collection algorithms, especially automatic garbage collection algorithms. Here three links were provided. Mainly we should focus on the mark and sweep copy algorithm, and one more algorithm is reference counting. Now we will move on to the tutorial 10 and 11. In tutorial 10, the questions are like this. Discuss the solutions to the following questions. Explain the difference between parallel execution, interleaved execution, and concurrent execution. For this you go through the first lecture of the concurrent programming, that is part 1, in which I have explained the difference between the parallel execution, interleaved execution, and concurrent execution. Parallel execution means the tasks will be executed on different processors, so that the first task is nothing to do with the another task. For some time, when the tasks are loaded into the memory, the CPU will switch back and forth between the processors, so that processes or tasks, so that it will go into the interleaved fashion. Interleaving in the sense the task execution cannot happen in sequential order. That means the tasks are interleaved, means that second task is started before the first one could end the execution. So that means there is no proper order in which order the execution of the tasks takes place. In the case of concurrent execution, the parallel execution, for parallel execution you require multiple processors, but in case of concurrent execution, it will also happen in the interleaved fashion, but you need to have this particular concurrent execution can be achieved on a single processor also. So here time interleaving will be done in the concurrent execution. So the best example of the concurrent execution is multithreading. During the process of this interleaving, the CPU will switch back and forth between the tasks. So while switching from one task to another task, the currently executing tasks status will be saved, and the it will pick up the another task newly and starts executing. And after some time, the currently executing task may be saved or will be kept some time in pending, and it may pick up another task. So this way of switching the tasks, that means performing the execution for some time and switching back and forth, is also said to be context switching. That is what the second question is. What is context switching and why it is needed? Basically, the context switching is needed. The reason is to achieve the this interleaved execution, and also sometimes a task may require some immediate execution. So such tasks need to be picked up by the processor immediately and has to execute. So in such a cases, if there is no interleaving fashion, that means if there is no preemption in the execution of the tasks, then this context switching is not possible. So non-preemptive way of executing the tasks will not lead to the context switching, but preemption of the tasks execution give you the context switch. So especially this context switching is needed for achieving the preemption. The next question is, explain the different states a process can be in at any particular time. That means a process can be in any time at any time. It may be in any of the 5 states, such as ready state, running state, and intermediate states like blocked state, suspend state, and sleep state. At the same time, it may also be in other states like monitor states. So basically, this monitor states will not be available for this high-end things like processes. But 5 states are most common, most commonly exist for the processes, such as ready state, running state, and intermediate state like such as blocked state, suspend state, and sleep state. In case of multi-threading, the threads along with these 5 states, they may also be in monitor states, where we'll use the wait, notify, and notify all. Next question is, consider the run method of the threads T1 to T4 contains the following code. The thread 1 consisting of 2 functions, that is worker1 dot do task 1, worker2 dot do task 2. That means these functions has to execute sequentially. That means first do task 1 of the worker 1 has to execute, then do task 2 of worker 2 has to execute. In T2, T3, T4 threads, we have only one method, that is manager.evaluate, worker3.do task 3, and manager.finish. Following program fragment is executed in the main method. First thread 1 was started, next thread 2 was started, T2 joins, then T3 joins, T3 started, T1 joins, and T3 joins. Result is equal to worker2 dot get value plus worker3 dot get value, T4 dot start. So that means there are several ways of starting and joining the threads, then printing the result. These kind of statements were there in the main method. So while executing these threads, the program execution will always start from main method, that is main thread entry. Then several threads may start and they may go and execute in different time intervals. Finally, once all threads are completed execution, then the main thread will be completed. This is what we have seen in the concurrent programming. So assume that now worker1 dot do task 1 takes 20 time units until it returns. Worker2 dot do task 2 takes 30 time units. That means since T1, while executing T1, do task 1 of worker1, do task 2 of worker2 has to be executed sequentially. That means do task 1 will take 20 time units till it returns. That means till execution of the do task 1 it takes 20 time units. Worker2 dot do task 2 will take 30 time units. That means total 50 time units. So T1 require 50 time units. So T1 was started here, then T2 was started. That means T2 is also started immediately after T1. Now in T2 we have one function called manager.evaluate. This manager.evaluate will take 40 time units. So now you look at 50 is for T1 and T2 40. That means 40 is within 50, right? That means 40 is less than 50. That means T2 can execute within the time interval of 50 units. Okay, keep it in mind. Now T2 join. That means T2 start and T2 join. That means 40 time unit execution function started and immediately it joined. That means this particular thing was executed and joined, but this was joined within 40 time units. Okay. Next T3 started. Still this 50 time units execution is going on. Okay. Within the time this 40 time units execution was started and joined to the main thread. Now T3 started. T3 has worker3 dot do task 3. The worker3 dot do task 3 have 20 time units. So already in the T1 dot start 50 time units, 40 time units was spent with the T2. Anyhow, this parallelly 40 time units T1 will be executed. Still 10 more time units are there. By the time T3 was started, that means all put together T3 has 20 time units, but still 10 time minutes was left over there. So thereby what will happen, till 10 units are required to complete the T1. So by the time T1 was joined, okay, T1 was joined. So when T1 was joined, this 50 time minutes was elapsed. Still 10 more time minutes are there because T3 has started by the time 10 units before, 10 time units before. Still 10 more time units are there to join to the main thread. So that is 50 plus 10. That means by this time T3 join the main method, 60 time minutes will be spent. Next result is equal to worker2 dot get value, worker3 dot get value. Now, so here by this time 60 time minutes will be over, right? So next worker2 dot get value, worker3 dot get value will return immediately. That means there is no time minutes spent for this. Next T4 dot start. So T4 dot start means manage dot finish. Manage dot finish require time 20 time minutes. That means there is no parallel, there is no concurrent execution with the T4, but with the T1, T2 has the concurrent execution, and for T3, T1 has the for T3, T1 has the concurrent execution. Once T1 is over, then T3 is also joined into the main method. So here overlapped, or we can say concurrent time threading executions were there. So by the time it completes T3 dot join, 60 time units were spent. But along with T4, there is no other thread running parallel, running concurrently. Hence T4 has to execute in its entirety. That means T4 required, that is manage dot finish, required 20 time units. Previously 60 time units plus 20 time minutes, all put together, this entire thread will execute in 80 time units. So usually instead of explanation, if you can draw a sequence diagram by making T1, T2, T3, T4, and for T1 the time spent, T2 time spent, T3 time spent, T4 time spent. So if you look at all over, by the time of completing the main thread, you will find what is the time spent for executing all the 4 threads by the main method, that is within the main method. Then it will comes out to be 80 time units. The next question is explain the terms data race and mutual exclusion. Data race in the sense if more than one thread is competing for a global shared data, then this is said to be data race. And mutual exclusion means each and every thread have certain portion of the code where it has to access the shared resource or shared data. So such kind of data, that means when the thread enters the execution into that particular instruction, then it has to access the global shared data, and the global shared data should be what you call should have a good persistency. Unnecessary modifications should not be allowed. So to have this in Java programming, the mutual exclusion will be addressed with the help of monitor states. So go to the lecture 36, concurrent programming part 5, in which the thread synchronization and inter-thread communication topics has been explained. Next is sixth question. Consider the following code: enumeration x0, x1, turn is equal to x0. Here x0 is 0 and x1 is 1, and turn x0. That means turn is a global shared variable. Some value was fixed to this, or some value was assigned to this. That means initially turn is equal to 0. Now there are two threads, thread 0 and thread 1. Thread 0 uses function to enter or leave the critical section. Thread 2 also uses the following function to enter the critical section. Void critical section, enter T0, while turn not equal to x0, continue. Void critical section, leave, turn is equal to x1. That means they are trying to acquire signal, that is while turn not equal to x0, then only enter into the critical section. While leaving from the critical section, turn will be set to 1. While in the case of critical section, thread 1, while it is entering into the critical section, it will check whether the turn is x1 or not. That means while turn not equal to x1, then wait for some time, then acquire the critical section or execute the critical section. Then while coming up to turn should be equal to x0. So this is the way of synchronization thing that was written there. So here some questions was asked here. Do these threads provide mutual exclusion for the critical section? And justify your answer. So will they provide mutual exclusion for the critical section? The answer is it is providing the code for the mutual exclusion, but there is no proper way of putting a synchronization between the threads. So that is what the second question is the threading proposal a satisfactory solution to the critical section problem? So obviously, will it be a satisfactory solution was provided there? Here a kind of wait and signal kind of functions was written, in which they keep on changing the turn and turn value, but once the turn value was changed, they have not notified. That means thread 0 is not notified thread 1, and thread 1 also not notified thread 0. So the reason it is always recommended to write with the help of inter-thread communication monitor states, that is wait and notify. If more than one thread available, then notify all. So this way of writing is essential, because if there, even though we have written the even though this particular question consisting of the proper synchronization, proper critical section related code, but without synchronization this cannot be achieved. So that reason we have to go for this monitor states. So anyhow, I have discussed this monitor states mentioning in the Java programming in lecture 36, and in 37 the same code was rewritten in the Python programming. That means I have explained how the same monitor states will be written in the Python programming for the inter-thread communication. So go through this lecture 36 and 37 so that you can answer this question. The third question, that is C bit, develop Python or Java code to implement the solution provided in A and B. So recall the example discussed in lecture 36, the mailbox example. In the mailbox, the producer is trying to put some message, and consumer is trying to retrieve the message. It is the same kind of scenario was also there in this question. So instead of mailbox, you assume it as the turn value, and setting the message means turn value should be set, and getting the message means the turn value has to be taken out. So this is that means turn value should be resetted. So this is the way how you are supposed to maintain the synchronization between the thread 0 and thread 1. So you can write the Java program, because you just consider the mailbox example and write the code accordingly by considering the turn value. So this is related to the tutorial 10. Now we will move on to the tutorial 11. The questions in the tutorial 11 are related to the inter-thread communication and thread synchronization. Here unsynchronized producer consumer test.java file was supplied to you to answer this question. Basically this is completely related to the producer consumer problem. Previously in the lecture 36 we have seen producer consumer problem with the mailbox example, and in lecture 37 we'll see this with the help of an unsynchronized integer example in Python. So both are the functionality is one and the same, just you are supposed to put the producer and consumer in the proper monitor states in order to perform the synchronization. So in the topics that were discussed in the lecture are deals with the one producer and many consumers, but in this tutorial the question asked was there exists several producers but only one consumer. So what this unsynchronized unsynchronized producer consumer test will do is the above code maintains an unsynchronized version of the producer consumer example from the lectures. Have a look at the code and try to figure out what will happen when you run it. Then try actually running it. Were you correct? Were the output will be correct? Check for the output. What exactly going on, and fix the problem or fix the program by appropriately making the methods synchronized. That means here the producer is producing around 80 integer values, but consumer will not consume these 80 integer values as they produce those values. So that is the reason you need to maintain proper synchronization. In the lecture 36 and 37 what we have seen is one producer but multiple consumers. That means one producer is producing value and all the consumers has to consume that value. But this here the sequence completely different, quite opposite of that topics that we discussed. Here multiple producers are there and one consumer is there. Now you are supposed to observe in the run method, okay, in the run method in the unsynchronized buffer appending the value and taking the value. So in which situation, in which place of this code you are supposed to use the monitor states like wait, notify or notify, so that this particular program should be converted into synchronization problem. So thereby the expected output, the unsynchronized buffer, that means if the producer P1 if produces 1001 to 1020, so it has to consumer has to consume this. Next 2001 to 2020, all these values should be consumed by the consumer. Like that all 80 values has to be consumed in sequence by the consumer. So for this you are supposed to go through the lecture 36 and 37, understand the mailbox example, understand the unsynchronized integer example in the Python program in lecture 37, so that you can easily modify this program just by putting the wait, notify all kind of stuff in especially in the unsynchronized buffer, because here unsynchronized buffer is the monitor. The reason is this monitor consisting of a synchronized code. So here where you are supposed to place synchronized keyword and where you are supposed to place the wait, notify all kind of functions, where you are supposed to maintain the flag, that is the producer has done the production like this and consumer has consumed, so this kind of flag should be set, so that you try to observe the place where you are supposed to place these particular functions and made it a synchronized program. So the ultimate aim of this question is to make you to write a program. Anyhow, the program code, skeletal code I have already provided along with this tutorial. The ultimate aim is to make this code synchronous. That means proper inter-thread communication should be maintained and thread synchronization should be maintained. Next, some general questions were asked here. Explain clearly why competition synchronization is not a problem in programming environment that supports coroutines but not concurrency. To answer this, you need to recall the coroutine concept that we have seen in the subprograms lecture. In coroutines, from any time, any statement to any coroutine to any coroutine, the shifting may takes place. But in case of concurrency, once a thread has been suspended, then it is not allowed to enter into critical section. So that is the reason the competition synchronization is not a problem in case of concurrency. The reason is if any thread is trying to access the competitive portion or common portion or a shared variable, then a lock will be acquired. If the lock will be acquired automatically and will enter into the critical section. But in case of coroutines, this is not the case. So that is the reason concurrency does not require competition synchronization, but in case of coroutines it is required. So competition synchronization is not necessary when no actual concurrency takes place, simply because there can be no concurrent contention for shared resources. But two non-concurrent processes cannot arrive at a resource at the same time. This is the logic behind this. That is the reason we don't require any competition synchronization for the concurrency if there exists perfect concurrency. But in case of coroutines, it is not like that. Recall the coroutines concept in subprograms. Say for example, here A is a coroutine and B is another coroutine. A starts executing, that is A is resumed from the master routine, and once it is once it came at this situation or at this statement, it resumed B. Then B went to here and B started executing, then again resumes A, then after executing some time, then again resumed B. So this is the way of shifting, but there is no lock acquired. Okay, there is no proper lock acquired. So the reason we require to have the when proper competition synchronization is required in case of coroutines, but when perfect concurrency is concurrent program was written, then this is not a big issue for us. Then the next question is what is the best action a system can take when a deadlock is detected? What is the basic cause behind the deadlock appearance? The basic cause is circular wait. That means a thread want to hold a lock on the certain portion of the thread 2, or thread 2 may want to perform lock on certain portion in the thread 1. So this is the way how the circular wait occurs. Because of the circular wait, deadlock may occur. So the reason, since there exists two threads, so when deadlock occurs, assuming that only two program units are causing the deadlock because of the circular wait, one of the involved program unit should be gracefully terminated. That means you may force exit that, or you may decrease the priority of that particular thread so that it will be gracefully terminated, thereby allow the other thread to continue. In this is one way you can avoid the deadlock. In some sources you will find the restarting of the system and all. Once the restarting of the system was done, then all the threads has to start from scratch, from the beginning, not scratch, from the beginning. So the latest change appeared to the global shared data cannot be appeared, or cannot be an integrated value cannot be appeared there. So that is the reason it is better to terminate processed gracefully. It means graceful termination, and allow other thread to continue. Next question is, busy waiting is a method whereby a task waits for a given event by continuously checking for that event to occur. So this is in generally will be happen in the event. What is the main problem with this approach? That means in the busy waiting, what will happen? A method whereby a task wait for a given event by continuously checking for the event to occur. That means a thread is executing. At a statement, a thread require input to occur. That means a key input from the keyboard has to be received, but that particular input from the keyboard is not receiving. So what is the main problem with this approach? The main problem is the thread or process which is waiting for the external event to occur may enter into the blocked state. Once it enter into the blocked state, the main problem with this busy wait is that mission cycles are wasted in that particular process. Simply CPU cycles will be wasted just for looking at the incoming event. So this is what the main problem of this busy waiting. The next question is, suppose two tasks A and B. When here tasks are there, you assume these are threads. Okay, A and B must use the shared variable buffer size. So once there is a shared variable means, so you must maintain a semaphore, so you must maintain a monitor for this, and getting the value, setting the value. Okay, so while getting the value, wait, get the value, and notify. Okay, while setting the value, wait, set the value, notify. Okay, so this must be remembered. Task A adds 2 to the buffer size, and task B subtract 1 from it. That means task A means thread A will add 1 and thread B will subtract 1. Assume that such arithmetic operations are done by 3-step process of fetching the current value, performing the arithmetic, and putting the new value back. In the absence of competition synchronization, what sequence of events are possible and what value result these operations? Assume that initial value of the buffer size is 6. That means here the question is, without synchronization, what could be the output that the question is asking. So without synchronization, you can do it properly, you can do it without any effort, but with synchronization also you try to write the program. That is, as I told you, wait, put the value or add the value of 2 in the for adding the value, then notify. Once notified, the thread B has to look for adding of the value and then get the value, subtract it, and print it, then notify to the thread A. So this is the way how try to write the synchronized, unsynchronized and synchronized code from scratch. Previously we have provided some code. In lectures also code was provided. In lecture code there are one producer, multiple consumers, but in the code that I have given in this tutorial, first question, multiple producers, one consumer. Based upon these codes, try to write your own code for this question. This is what the tutorial 11 is. Next, you observe the lab assignment 12 and 13. Here implement the following exercises using applicable concurrent programming features of C++, Java and Python. So you may ignore C++ here. You may take the Java or Python programming to implement the following questions. To gain understanding of the concurrent programming using Python, students may refer to chapter 25 Python multi-threaded programming from the Python tutorial, and lecture 37 okay, lecture 37 of concurrent programming, that is concurrent programming, that is multi-threaded programming with C++ and Java, Python. You please look into that. Next is you may also go through the chapter 11 of Java complete reference if you are doing in Java programming. Write a program that runs 5 threads. Each thread randomizes a number between 1 and 10. The main thread waits for all the other to finish. Calculate the sum of the number of numbers which are randomized and print the sum. That means the producer is producing producers are producing randomized inputs, and the consumer has to consume those randomized inputs and present the sum. So this is like a multiple producers and consumer, single consumer. So you try to implement runnable interface if you use Java programming. Next is write a program that creates a thread. Let's call thread 1. Thread 1 creates another thread. That means within thread 1 you have to create new thread. Next, thread 2 creates another thread 3. That means within thread 1 thread 2 should be created. Within thread 2 again thread 3 should be created, and so on up to 50 threads. Each thread should print hello from thread 1, thread number. That means you have to pass the thread number, hello from thread number, but the program need to be structured in such a way that the threads print their greetings in the reverse order. That means first it has to print, first the output should be like this: hello from thread 50. Okay. Next is hello from thread 49. Next, hello from thread 48. Like that till hello from thread 1. That means creation is in the progressive order, but the printing of the threads will be in the reverse order. So this is a you are supposed to think what is the logic behind this. The logic is very simple. The creation will be done. Once the creation was done, the joining of these threads will be in the reverse order. Okay. So joining you should focus on, so that it will be in the output will be printed in the reverse order. Third question: instead of keeping each object its own score in the above question, modify the program, use one collection to store all the results. That means each object will own their own score. That means here the sum, the program that runs between that will produce the randomized input or randomized number between 1 and 10. Here above question means question 1. Okay, don't consider question 2. It is not. It is question 1. It is related to question 1. Here previously only one consumer is keeping track of the sum value, but here irrespective of the so multiple producers are keeping their own instance of the sum, but here it is asking the question was asked that modify the program to use only one collection to store all the results. So here one collection in the sense you may use any one of the collection data sets, data structures, and label the data structures with the corresponding thread numbers and maintain the result. Next one is implement stack as a linked list in which push, pop and isEmpty methods can be safely accessed from multiple threads. So push, pop and isEmpty, these are the functions, should be synchronous functions. Then only you can access quietly from multiple threads. So that means the linked list should be a monitor and it should be shared among the threads. Write a program word count that counts the word in one or more files. Start a new thread for each file. For example, if you call Java word count report.txt address.txt homework.java, then program might print address.txt so and so how many things are there. In case of homework.java, this file there are 445 words available. Report.txt 2099 words available. That means for first file one thread has to create, second file second thread, third file third thread. these three threads should go concurrently and count the number of words available in the particular files. Next, enhance the previous question program so that the last active thread also prints a combined count. That means whatever is the last thread which is live will print the combined count of word count of first thread, second thread and third thread. Use locks to protect the combined word count and a counter of active threads. Next question is write a program that searches all files specified on the command line and prints out all lines containing reserved words. Reserved words means here reserved keywords. Start a new thread for each file. For example, if you call java find buffer, okay, report.txt, address.txt, then homework.java, then the program might print report.txt, buffet style lunch will be available at so and so. Next, address.txt, buffet comma Warren, okay, so and so. That means whatever the keywords that you supply, that should be identified and should be shown onto the screen. Or if you might have given a Java program as the input, then the reserved keywords should be shown. Reserved keywords means there will be some reserved keywords will be available, some fixed keywords. So those keywords should be identified from the program. So like that, you are supposed to create one thread for each input that you have provided, each input file, and these threads will check for the reserved words in those files. Next is implement the merge sort algorithm by spanning a new thread for each smaller merge sort. So in the merge sort, you merge multiple arrays. So for every merging, you create a thread and merge the value, and the result should be returned, and so that the new thread, what is the unsorted array thread, will use the sorted array thread and will go for performing of the sorting. Develop a GUI program, 9th question. Develop a GUI program in Java and Python which displays different colors. One color need to be shown at a time. Maintain minimum of 2 seconds gap between showing another color. So here again, switching sleeping and waking up. While sleep and wake up, there should be 2 seconds gap. That means 2000 milliseconds. Once it is sleep and wake up, the color has to change. So this is the way you are supposed to do the GUI coloring. That means for every 2 seconds, the color should be changed. Last question in the 12th the lab assignment. Develop a program to implement multiple producer-consumer problems with proper synchronization, in which producer and consumer will perform the following. Just like recall the mailbox example. So what the producer will do is, one or more threads produce values, one or more threads consumes the values. Here the question is now multiple producers, multiple consumers. In the tutorial lectures we have seen that one variety, that is in lectures we have seen one variety, that one producer, multiple consumers. In tutorial the question was asked, the first question, tutorial 11 first question was asked this, multiple producers are there, one consumer is there. Now here this question is asking that multiple producers, multiple consumers are available. So values are maintained as private data in the object with the store, put and load get operations. So this store and load operations, that is put and get operations, must be synchronous. And the value that are going to be maintained as a private data should be kept in the monitor. Okay. These objects can only hold one value at a time, either putting value or getting value. These objects must hold only one value at a time. So this is little bit complex because multiple producers, multiple consumers are there. So for this, what you are supposed to do is you go through the Java to complete reference. You can go to the last topic of the multi-threading, where that is before deadlocks. You will find how to manage multiple producers, multiple consumers. Only small change will be there in the order of wait and wait, notify all. Go through that and try to complete this assignment.